Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, chaps. FPL is back with a bang with some high scores and some pain for Mitrovic droppers and for those who got pepped with rotation. Adam, how are you? What colour was your arrow in game week 17?
Yeah, I'm excellent. Thanks very much. I got a small green arrow. Although it seemed like I got a red arrow in every single league that I was in. But yeah, small green arrow. So up to let's have a look. Just outside the top 400k. It was yeah, I mean, I'm fairly happy with how things went. I mean, it was good that Kepa's started and he proved that he's a bit of a bonus magnet as well, and a save magnet. So I had in my team, I've had Kepa, Trippier, Almiron, Martinelli, Rashford, Martial, and Haaland all score well for me. So I only had 4 blanks this week. Reece James, you know, if he could have only stayed on the pitch for another 5 or 6 minutes, whatever it is. I mean, he's made a glass. I did sort of pre-warn myself, so that was yeah, I wasn't surprised by that. I mean, it's a shame for him, but yeah, I think I'm going to start steering clear of him because he just can't.
Another 1-pointer. It's unbelievable how many 1-pointers he's had, isn't it? In the last year.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. De Bruyne blanked. I think he's a bit unlucky to blank, but I'm happy with having De Bruyne there. And I expect him to do okay this week. And then I got blanks from Cancelo for a 1-pointer, and then also the shit Andy Carroll as well. Got me a 2-pointer. I must admit, I was obviously at the game on Boxing Day, and that made me laugh when thinking your striker that you've got has gone through. He's missed his 4th big chance, and just to hear the whole end just singing "You're a shit Andy Carroll" was that must admit that made my evening. So. But yeah, so reasonably happy. I don't think there's any player that I really need to, you know, they're desperate to ditch. Even James, I think, can wait a week. So yeah, so far so good.
Good stuff. And it looks like Salah versus De Bruyne was a decision this week that was a difference maker for ranks. It looks like I think all 3 of us actually went for De Bruyne over Salah in the end after. Not going to blame you, Adam, but you made a very compelling argument for De Bruyne last week, and it's probably been heightened this week. There is still another kind of game week before City double again. I'm quite happy holding De Bruyne this weekend against Everton, I think. Whereas, you know, who's Salah got Leicester, but you know, it can go either way there, and then obviously De Bruyne's in place for the double after that, but. Yeah, what's your take, Rich, on Salah versus De Bruyne?
Well, yeah, I definitely was partly swayed by the stats that Adam so beautifully presented last week. But I was already after seeing the. I think we podded just before the League Cup game, didn't we? In the evening, so I got to see. Yeah, De Bruyne played very well in that game.
Yeah, I did.
He's all over it really, and I think that. Coupled with the stats, just made my mind up. Having been on Salah for the whole 2 weeks of build-up, I did switch it. But I think now, yeah, it's possibly a bit silly to start jumping between one and the other. You know, Salah has a very nice fixture tomorrow night. Clearly could do well again, and that'll put all the pressure back on KDB. But, you know, when they've got Everton at home, you know, I don't think it warrants moving him out, even though, you know, he may... I guess the biggest worry is that he gets a benching because it's only sort of 2.5 days since he'll have played on the Wednesday night. So Pep could bench De Bruyne and play, I don't know, Foden and Bernardo who missed the game or something. You don't know, do you? So I think I'll stick and I'll see this period out, you know, because of the double game week coming, and hope that, you know, De Bruyne plays catch up a bit over the next couple of weeks. So I'm all right, but yes, round one to the Salah owners.
Indeed, and because the captaincy is out of play, this is what makes it a bit easier, I think, to stick with what you've got. Because obviously, if Haaland wasn't in the game and we had captaincy to consider as well, I think that would make it very, very different. But because captaincy is, you know, evidently last night again off the table, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, and I think as well, I think we made the point before we came on air, it's about combinations of players, isn't it? If I had gone for Salah, you know, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have gone for Saka instead, who got me 9 points. You know, I'd have probably put Foden in there, who got me 1 point. So most Salah people have possibly got Foden, so the total is 13 points versus 11. So you haven't really lost out to some of those common combinations as much as how it might seem. However, you know, same thing happens 2 or 3 weeks running, and clearly it'll be more tempting to switch it out. But yeah, what I found funny was that all our teams ended up pretty much the same. They were very, very similar in the end. You know, both you know, in all positions. Actually, I think it was only the fact that, you know, for some idiotic reason I changed my mind about getting Almiron in, and you two guys did, and I just had enough money to keep Saka, so I kept him. It's not a bad call, but yeah, I wish I had Almiron too.
Yeah, as Rich said, it turns out we've got one player different between all three of us, and unsurprisingly, all had very average game weeks. So, but you know, the template is very strong, and when Almiron is performing as a fourth or third midfielder for his price point, it does make things a bit easier, doesn't it? When he's in there, because it makes that starting 11 a bit easier to build. So, but yeah. Decent scores. I had 89 as well. Reasonably happy. The Rashford's hit was nice. Almiron was nice. Kepa, yeah, and I've got the same issues as everyone else, James. So we'll talk about that in a bit. Firstly, before we start off, we are still running our festive offer: 12 days of Christmas free trial for fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. Full unlimited access to the site, our app, and our brilliant tools, including our My Team feature, which now gives recommended transfers that shares your personalised recommended most optimal transfer every game week, specifically for your team, using artificial intelligence. You can get this all for free for the next 12 days, which is still 2 game weeks. So a great time to try it out. Just click on the top link in the description below. My win this week, it is telling me to save in game week 19, and it is recommending, saving game week 18. And at the moment, and the alternative is to go James to Trent, because I have money in the bank. So that is what it's telling me to do at the moment. But it is recommending that I save, and it'll be interesting to see after the game updates, after the deadline tomorrow evening, what it tells me to do with 2 transfers. So go and try it out for yourself. It may not be the transfer you kind of want to make, but it certainly does make you think a little bit, because it's completely objective with data. It's really, really good. Good evening, everyone in the chat. I'm 1974 says, my New Year's resolution: never, ever, 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 ever pick Zaha again. FPL River is in. Janice says, hello, could I have a small violin? Did my planned transfers game week 17, but managed somehow to use the free hit chip. 95% concentration is 50% performance. But you know what? I can sympathize with you there, because the free hit chip, when you make a transfer on the FPL site, inexplicably the free hit chip is the first button there. It's the first. You have to actually skip past that button to go just to play transfer, which I think is really, really poor on FPL side. So I feel really sorry for you then, Janny. Joy, I haven't got the violin in front of you. If I had it, you would have a few tugs on the strings there, that's for sure. Wayne Robinson is in. Have both Wilson and James. So I'm going to roll the transfer. G. Davidson is in. Oberis from Washington is in. Josh Leave, FPL Blackstar, FPL River. Sean, Brian Schofield, Colin Bugler, Mark Gordon, Just a Bad Toast and Stuff says bloody Kulu. Johnny R, Big A is in, and Just a Dad says change Almiron to Kulu, Mitro to Rashford just before the deadline on the Mitro news. Indeed you do. Mitro definitely hurt a few of us.
Mate, I think you may recall when we were going through our teams last night, you told me to live a little with holding on to Mitrovic.
But
yeah, why not go out on a limb, Rich? And I duly did, and brought in Martial, and look at what he returns.
I think the big thing with Mitrovic, because I think I'd have possibly kept him. It was the press conference from Marco Silva, which pretty much made it a no-brainer to sell, because it seemed unlikely he'd be involved. And you also got to factor in 2 of those returns came when Palace were down to 9 men. So
of course,
I'm not. It's a quite a it's just one of those, isn't it? And in a way, it's probably better with the press conference because his ownership isn't as high as it would have been.
No, it didn't. I don't think it really hurt. I haven't seen many teams that actually benefited from those 15 points, even off the bench, because some of the players that were benched, came on for 1 point cameos, didn't they? People like
Exactly.
and
Foden, Cancelo,
and that. Yeah, exactly. They all came on. So Mitrovic off the bench was blocked for those that kept him for a lot of people.
FPL Nim is also in the chat. Welcome, Nim. Good to see you. Okay, we're going to look at game weeks 18 and 19. We're going to do Rich Pickings. Adam may have some Hopta stats for us. We'll look at the best captain for game week and for 19, which could be different to Haaland because of the double gaming. We'll look at that. We'll look at some Reece James replacements. We will also look at the best double game week players ahead of Chelsea and Fulham. We'll do Fergie is a punt and then look at our teams for next week. So firstly, Rich, what are we looking at first today?
It's Rich Pickings. I think it's Love and Regret. Isn't
it is.
Is that what
it is Love and Regret.
It
It's a lovely title, Rich.
Yeah, an old Deacon Blues song, if you can remember back that far. But I think this is really a mixture of just the sentiments that we've probably all gone through over the last 2 or 3 days with players that we maybe had in our squads before the World Cup and have let go and wish we had them back straight away. And also there's such a plethora of players who did well across the board. We've got some favourites that paid back straight away. So a mixture of things just to stimulate some conversation. Some good news, some bad. I mean, particularly anyone who held on to or brought in Callum Wilson just for him to go sick on Boxing Day was very unlucky.
Very unlucky. He would definitely have scored at he would score a minimum of one, wouldn't he? Exactly. Yeah.
Would have had a decent haul himself and looked good ongoing. Again, Phil Foden was very popular as a backup to Salah owners for the third City player. Once again, I think this is one you were right on when you were saying he was 50-50 for starts, and I think you got some
stick for that, mate, in the chat.
Feedback on that from the chat, didn't you? And myself, and said, no, he's more likely than that. And lo and behold, he's benched for another game. So now he looks almost like a unavoid.
He's now been benched for 4 out of the last 5 league games. That is crazy, isn't it? And before that, he was scoring goals for fun. Unbelievable. I don't know what's happened there, but anyway.
No. So there's that, and then of course we've just talked about Mitrovic and the ups and downs of owning him. We've still got jeopardy with Mitrovic now, even though he's rising in price. Plays Southampton and then a double game week. He's still got the spectre of 4 yellow cards hanging over him. So do you move for him this week? To take in the Southampton fixture, get him ready for the double, or do you wait and just see if he's clear to play the double by getting through the game? So there's questions to answer there, and of course, my own regret was leaving Almiron out, thinking he was just a flash in the pan for the first half of the season. He'll revert to the mean and just
home to Leeds on the weekend, Rich. Home to Leeds,
exactly. So it's another hide behind the sofa job, but one we did get right, all of us, was Marcus Rashford coming good at the right time, and then he's looking good. So there's just really a few, but we could probably have had 10 guys on this slide, couldn't we? Really, in terms of other options.
What's your takes from the weekend, Adam? In terms of players missing, the ones we missed, and the ones we hit.
To be honest, I think it's only one game week, so it's quite difficult to draw any conclusions. But there were loads of players that scored. If you look at the third striker options, Martial, Havertz, Mitrovic, a couple that didn't, in that people may have looked at, and Nketiah as well. Yeah. So, I think if you went Wilson or Che Adams, they were probably the other two that did that came up short. I think the midfielder category, Zaha, you could say was unlucky because they played most of the second half with 9 men, and so Trossard, Brighton score 3, has no involvement, potentially unlucky there. But if you look at all the other attacking contenders, I think most of them returned. I thought Arsenal was the one that interested me the most, because I think there were attacking returns for all of the attacking quartet. Thought Nketiah looked sharp,
Yeah.
took his goal well. Thought Saka looked good. Maybe marginally offside for that first goal. I thought Martinelli was the quietest of all of them, but took his goal well. But the one for me that stood out massively was Odegaard. I thought he was exceptional.
Such a good footballer, isn't he?
But he's just great. And I think I'd looked at, so we're talking about stats, looking at him in comparison to the other two Arsenal attackers. This season, he's got 14 bonus. They've both got 7. So he's well ahead on that. He's created more big chances than both of them. So 8 to 6 to 3 for Saka, 6 for Martinelli. And both his points per game and his expected points per game are up. So he just looked involved in everything. And I did consider going him over Martin. I think because you had the money invested, it made it quite difficult to go with it. But I thought he looked brilliant, and he went right to the top of my watch list.
Why do you think he's not? I suppose he's the least favourite. Do you think we're just we're slightly? A lot of us are trapped on Martinelli, aren't we? Because of the 6 million thing. But then he's still not, the most favourite toy in the shop, is he? Because of the likes of Saka, the 8. He's a lot more money. He's 8 million versus 6.4. So but Rashford was more popular. I don't know why, because he's the captain. He's everything's going through him a little bit like KDB, etc. But it just doesn't seem to be that popular. Although he possibly is. If you are short an Arsenal attacker, he possibly is the one to get in now.
I think you're right. I think so. A point I made last week was when we were looking at the 8 million midfielders. Are we looking at them needlessly? Because I think Kulu, I do like Kulu, but I think outside of that, and I think Saka will do well, but will he do better, and will he do proportionately better than your Odegaard, your Martinellis, your Almirons, your Rashfords, your Trossards, your Zahas, etc.? And I'm not sure is the answer to that. Arsenal spread the goals around, so I think you're going to get better value from the likes of Odegaard and Martinelli. Even if Saka slightly he's got to outperform them by maybe a point per match, let's say. And I don't see that happening. Odegaard's the one for me. He's involved in everything. I like Nketiah as well, but I think I think there's just so much value in that midfield, and there's other strikers that's probably the way I'd go. But I think if you look under 7 million in midfielders, there's just so many options. Do you need to go up to an 8 million? Could you actually use those funds on going for the likes? We'll talk about defenders. I mean, it's a Robertson. Could you go slightly more expensive with your strikers? Could you fit in a Kane, Darwin, and Haaland possibly further down the line? I'm just not seeing. I think they'll do well, but with the likes of Almiron, Rashford, etc., really, really stepping up. I mean, Rashford's going nowhere for me unless he gets injured. Even with Man City and Arsenal coming up, he looks on a different planet at the moment. So, I think that's where I'm at. Is that the 8 millions? I'm not as convinced on for value.
Again, I think as well that with our size, we've possibly got this little slight trap with Andreas sitting there as a 4.5 with the double game week coming. But then if you start to sort of spread that funds and have a 3-5-2 and have 5, good midfielders at the sort of 6.5 bracket, plus 1 premium, you can play 5 every week across the midfield. But we've got this, this 4.5 gem in Andreas there, which is fine for another couple of weeks, but that's only till second week of January. We'll be looking at maybe changing that around a bit once the double's out of the way. So there's definitely lots of opportunities to move it around.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think because of that, you might be able to do something. Bournemouth might have a double game week coming up where you could go bring Solanke in and then upgrade Pereira to an Odegaard or whoever it would be. And it's quite good having a full playing squad, even if you've got an extra option at the moment, because we're going to get blank game weeks coming up. So been able to manipulate your squad where if you're going to bench points, you just have to just accept it. But I think it's quite good to have 15 playing players.
I think the two the takeaways for me, the first one is that, again, just lots of goals and lack of clean sheets. Again, I think there was an average of 3.5 goals a game over the fixtures or something like that. And I think the one miss for me, maybe, or the one player, I wouldn't say I overlooked him because I've got him in if I could, but I just think Kane, with the way he's still playing, with the fixtures that are coming up, with the double that's coming up as well, I would just love to be able to get him in and squeeze him in. He's probably the one player. If you look at the stats, if you look at all the if you look at the predictions for the coming weeks, he is right up there alongside Haaland. He's the one player I wish I could squeeze in. But yeah, definitely moving away from 4 or 5 at the back is a bit of a no-brainer. So I've just got that to add, really. But talking of double game weeks, we now have a graphic. This is courtesy of Mikhail Tokvam. His Twitter link is in the description below, from the transfer algorithm, and this shows the likelihood of double game weeks coming up over the next 7 or 8 game weeks. As we can see, Chelsea and Fulham is confirmed for next week. We know that already. We'll talk about their options in a little bit. Man City and Spurs will be a double game week in Game Week 20, as long as neither have a replay in the third round of the FA Cup, and that's where it tends to get interesting then from Game Week 21 onwards. There's lots of opportunities for doubles, but purely off the back of what happens. I think it's in the Carabao Cup quarterfinals and the FA Cup third round as well. So we will know this later on after that. But Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Everton, Palace and Brighton could have doubles, and also Arsenal and Man City are going to double in Game Week 23 as well. And then we move on, if we look to Game Week 25, which I believe will be a big blank game week there. This gives a bit of a picture, a really good visual picture of what is up and coming. So I haven't really started to think much past Game Week 20 yet. If I'm honest, that Man City and Spurs game is kind of where I've looked up to. Adam, have you looked any further at the moment? Have you got any thoughts about how you're going to tackle these weeks after, or is it just save a transfer this week and see how it lands?
I think the latter. I've had to play around and looked at options and started thinking about it. I think you mentioned Harry Kane. I think there is an argument for when I lose Martial that I might go Kane and look to take value out elsewhere. I mean, potentially even losing De Bruyne and just going with purely mid-price midfielders, because I think that's where I could see just using my transfers there, because I think I was joking about Darwin earlier, but I think what I would say, I actually thought he was excellent against Villa.
He was very unlucky not to return, wasn't he?
His movement was just caused us so many problems, and his finishing isn't actually that bad. I mean, I'd take that back. It's I think it'll even up. So according to FBref, I think he's got when his last 2 seasons in Portugal, he actually overperformed his XG. So it's not, and he's only just under his XG at the moment over the season. So I don't think he's that bad. But what I can see me wanting to move to is that set and forget. I think the other option that is there, it's just this. I don't know if there's been any more on Ivan Toney's potential ban.
I haven't heard any more, but it's enough to.
He would be. I think he's the. For me, it's sort of between him and Kane that I would want as that third striker long term. But obviously, the potential ban.
I think there's some sort of hearing in early January, so I think he's okay for the next 2 weeks at least.
But he's not a transfer. He's not a transfer in until we get past that point, is he? So. But I think I agree with you. Save a transfer. Let's see how things unfold. There's a lot of uncertainty. I wouldn't get too bogged down with the double game weeks though, because I think it's quite easy to to bring in rubbish players into your team that, or just players because they have a double.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at Chelsea's, it's not actually that great a double, I don't think.
When one of the games is against City, no, it's not.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think you can easily get bogged down by the by that. I think the interesting one will be game week 25, which is the League Cup final. Because if City go to the final, which they've got pretty good record under Pep of going to the final, that could really, you know, obviously depending on who they play, but you know, it could be City and Newcastle, for example, or City and United, and that would take out, you know, potentially 6 or 7 players from most people's team.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Would that
I think
be
that's
a free hit then, or not?
I'm just looking at the fixtures now, actually. So it's worth sort of thinking and planning about. I suppose it depends on who gets to the final. Because if City don't, it makes it a lot easier. But if I'm looking at the fixtures just quickly, Spurs have got Chelsea, so that's quite a tight one, hard to call. And I don't see Liverpool are away at Crystal Palace, so that's again not an easy game. So I don't see there's many fixtures where there's a great team playing a not so great team.
Okay. Rich, what is your take on the doubles? Have you started plotting and planning yet, or not?
I think the only thing I've really started to think about is that I'd like to maybe roll the transfer this week if I can, and make sure that the transfer off Reece James is not a wasted one, and that it's sort of cognizant of the double game week. So looking at this, and if you sort of take this as a prediction, you know, there's so many permutations of Brighton games that they're as likely to have a double game week in game week 21 as Chelsea and Fulham are next week. You know, if you read that just statistically, even more likely than a certain fixture. So you're possibly quite safe in trading down to, say, a Lewis Dunk off Reece James. That's just going to give you that player for the double game week. Although Dunk's fixtures leading up to that double aren't that great. So I'd still possibly go with what Adam was saying. So make sure that you're still always buying good players from good teams. So you might be better off going down to a Botman, for instance, from Newcastle, you know, to just cover that excellent Newcastle defence. I think I've only conceded 11 goals, which is the lowest in the league now. I've won 6 on the bounce. They look very, very strong. But just having Trippier is not going to get you any gains on the field because we've all got him. So you almost got to double up on Newcastle defence to benefit from those clean sheets. So there are options there that don't relate to the double game weeks that I'm considering. I've already got 3 Arsenal and 3 City with the scheduled doubles in mind anyway. So I feel I'm sort of with the De Bruyne thing, of course, you know, the 3 of us are a bit of a transfer ahead of all the Salah owners will probably flip to De Bruyne in game week 20 anyway. I'll certainly think about getting a 3rd City asset. So I just think it's really important to treat each transfer with a lot of care and not just jump on the best 1 week asset. For instance, you know, people are saying Luke Shaw's a good bet, you know, to bring in. He's great for Bournemouth next week, but then they've got 2 hard fixtures straight after that whilst there are double game weeks going on. So you're only really getting a player for 1 week there, and you're still spending a precious, you know, 4 points or a precious free transfer on that move. So I definitely think there's nothing wrong with going to a short term asset who has a double, but I don't particularly like some of the doubles. I don't think there's much point in getting another Chelsea defender like Azpilicueta or Cucurella because they may get rotated anyway. We don't really know what Chelsea's back 4 or even a back 5 is. Chilwell could be coming back. You know, there are options on the right hand side. So I can't be sure Azpilicueta is going to play both games. I can't be sure that Cucurella is going to play both games. So I'd probably just stick with Kepa and cover the defence with 1 player. Tim Ream scored, didn't he, over the weekend? But who's ever considered a Fulham defender, really? You know, I think before you're better on the stats than me, Adam, but I think they were the second worst defence for chances conceded or something to Bournemouth after Bournemouth or Forest or something. So they're right down the bottom of the league in terms of chances conceded. So I don't fancy any of the immediate defenders. But Mitrovic is still on my mind. I think if Mitrovic gets through this game, I think I'd be struggling not to lose either Darwin or Martial for Mitrovic.
I don't know on that
Darwin.
though. I don't know, because he's a yellow card. If he gets through it, he's a yellow card away from a ban.
Yeah.
You know what'll happen? We'll get booked in the
first game.
First game. But I also think, unless you're going to captain Mitrovic, I'm not sure, because Martial, for example, has got Bournemouth at home. Yeah. And I think Darwin's got, was it Brentford away? I don't know if I'd want to lose either of them. And then you're probably going to want to take Mitrovic out because his fixtures get tougher. So, yeah, I'm not convinced. Just going back to Luke Shaw, I actually think he's a very. I take your point. I really agree with your point in general. I can see what you were trying to make. 100% agree. But I think Luke Shaw's quite a good option. Because I think looking at United's fixtures, Wolves away, Bournemouth at home. They've then got two tough ones, which I think you were alluding to, which is the City and the Arsenal games. Completely agree. Unlikely to be clean sheet. But after that, they've got Crystal Palace, Leeds, Leicester, and Brentford. And I think on the whole, they're fairly good fixtures. And I think he rotates quite nicely with Ben White, other than maybe one or two game weeks. So I think you could, because most people a lot have got Cancelo and Trippier, who I don't think for me, you start Trippier every week. It's a no-brainer. Same with Cancelo. So it's only really that third spot, assuming you're going to be playing more than, you're not going to be playing 4 or 5 at the back. So I think you could maybe look at rotating 3 defenders, whether it's Shaw, White. I think you can throw in double Newcastle there by going with a Botman. You could look at, obviously, Brighton. I think it's potentially worth. I'm not a fan of Patterson or Bruyne. I think it's potentially worth upgrading them now, because I think we're going to need squad depth further down the line, and I don't really want to play either of them.
No, and there are quite a few who've gone. The injury to James will be more urgent because they've got both of them. Some of our squads with both Patterson and Bueno as just bench cover, and now one of them's got to play. This weekend if you've got those two there. I think if we talked last week about Ben White being a bit of a cover pick for Reece James, and we're going to have to bring him in to bat straight away, aren't we?
Yeah. Which is perfect. Yeah. I think he looked quite. Actually, thought he looked quite good from an attacking perspective against. I think he's really growing into that role at right back. So yeah, pleased that I've got him.
So just I think the fixtures and the doubles have fallen quite nicely around the FA Cup as well, in terms we can probably look to save in 18, or use one if we really want to. But if we set up the unlimited transfers team pretty well, we should have cover for this game. We can then look to get some coverage in if we want for the Chelsea and Fulham double and 90. We'll look at those options in a second. There's then the FA Cup third round, which will then dictate what doubles happen in 21. So we're going to have a full sort of week there to really go through that for the fixtures to fall, and to then really look forward at our options. So I suppose in summary, it's not really worth going hell for leather now trying to plan for all these potential doubles, because we don't know what they're going to be, and our teams are set up pretty well anyway, I think, aren't they? We've had a lot of questions around Reece James replacements. Obviously, we can do that. This week or next week. It looks like he's going to be out for at least a month, which obviously a massive blow for him and for Chelsea. We've got the hub particular points up at the moment for the next 5 game weeks for defenders. João Cancelo, unsurprisingly, at the top, 28 points. Trent Alexander-Arnold, who has come up quite a lot on recommended transfers on the hub, is in there at 23.9. Kyle Walker and Akanji. Obviously, the problem with Man City defenders, as we know, as we saw last night, we have no real idea who's going to start. I mean, Laporte, for example, last night, they can all play everywhere, right? So Akanji, I think, has now played in 3 of the 4 positions. I could probably quite easily play at left back as well. Stones has got competition ready for him as well, as has Walker. So the Man City ones, I think, is take a bit of a gamble.
Rico Lewis is now Pep's favourite as well.
Rico Lewis is in as well. Yeah. So, I mean, who knows? Robertson is next, 6.8 million. So he and Trent are probably looking pretty good options. If you think the Liverpool defence is going to come good, I watched them the other night, mind, and I would say attacking wise, they're always dangerous, especially Robertson. But defensively, I just think they're absolutely dreadful. And I tweeted out this week. I got a bit of stick about this. Like I think I used the word like ridiculous high line they keep using. They just can't play it. They're in between the lines. And it was interesting because someone replied and said, ever since Wijnaldum has left, he used to be that kind of anchor man who could kind of link up the defensive midfield. But since he's gone, apparently this is a Liverpool fan, the gap in between the midfield and defence is absolutely shocking, and they just cannot play that high line. And Alisson, I believe, has made the 3rd highest or 4th highest amount of saves at the whole league this season, which, for a team who are pretending to go and try and win a league, it's abysmal. So it's really, really tough there, I think, in terms of going for Robertson or Trent personally, just because I just don't feel like they're going to get, any or many clean sheets, whoever they play. Thiago Silva is still up there high, played and kept a clean sheet the other night. Perisic came back and played within 2 days, quite strangely, but he is up there as well. Kieran Trippier, and surprisingly, Luca Dean is up there, Adam, quite interestingly. I don't know if it's because Villa's fixture pretty good. Koulibaly, Chalobah was dropped, he didn't play. Saliba, Van Dijk, and then James is obviously down there, but he will be flagged as injured in FPL. So a few options there. Botman, the one you mentioned, Rich, isn't in there. It's probably because there's a lot of doublers in here over the next few game weeks. But Rich, what are your kind of initial thoughts on James' replacements?
Well, before we mentioned a couple already, like Shaw and Botman and Dunk, etc. Who released quite a bit of cash. So coming off Reece James at 5.8 and going down to one of those sub 5 million options, you're getting $1 million plus cash to add whatever you've got already in your wallet. So that allows you to do other things as we step into the double. So it's not just about the defender you buy. I mean, you could go the other way. If you kept some money back, you could jump up to Robertson, but 6.8 is a big jump, and having that second sort of 7 million-ish midfielder alongside Cancelo in a lot of sides, I'm not sure that's the right balance. I think you're going to want to, or I'm going to want to consider maybe moving up to Harry Kane for game week 20 when they have a double, maybe covering that in some way. Let's say Kane has a really good game, Tottenham's form picks up, we're going to suddenly think, got to have Kane for that double game week. Darwin's still missing, can't hit a barn door, so he's only 2.6 million away from a Darwin upgrade. You can maybe have 1.6 of that by selling Reece James to going down to a Botman or something. So that's part of the money there. You also have the immediate double. I'm thinking about getting Mason Mount in. We haven't mentioned him yet. He's a couple of the different mids could be upgraded to Mount, who's 7.5 or 7.6, I think. So got a 10-pointer at the weekend. Another one of these mid-price mids who's immediately returned. So there's and then Kai Havertz is another one at 7.7. He's only $1 million up from Martial. So have it freeing up that £1 million just gives you so many options to take your money forward into the the future game weeks. Brighton get a double, then Trossard will be really, really popular for that week. So just make sure you're not skint going into game weeks 19 and 20. So I think the logical thing to do is probably to downgrade most squads, unless I know quite a lot of teams of managers have kept back a couple of million. That's a different conversation. Then you can probably splurge a bit and go up to a Robbo or something.
What's your thoughts, Adam, at the moment on James replacements?
Yeah, I think Rich summarised it quite nicely. I've got a short list of 3. If I throw Dunk in there, I think he's a possibility given the doubles as well. So maybe 4. But the ones that I'm looking at are Shaw. I think it's a good option. I think it's a solid option for Man United. That could be Dallo, but I think a United defender. Robertson. I like Robertson. I must admit, I take your point on Liverpool conceding, but they will get some clean sheets because of how good Alisson is at one-on-ones. He's the best in the world.
He's unbelievable, isn't he?
He's
he really is
ridiculous at
such an
saving
amazing keeper.
one-on-ones.
He is.
Yeah, he's absolutely ridiculous. So the thing that impressed me with Robertson is I think because they played Oxlade-Chamberlain, he was just bombing forward at every opportunity. And he, in that first half alone, he could have had 3 assists easily. He had 1 ruled out for offside. And there was one where he put a ball in. I don't know what Darwin was doing. He was actually like Andy Carroll in that one, just totally missed it. Which I think he deliberately stepped over it. But I like Robertson, and I think with Luis Diaz out, there's a notable difference in his game. So if you look at him the first 10 game weeks, I think he only played 5 or 6 because of injury, but he didn't create a big chance in that period where Diaz was playing. And then since then, he's created 5 big chances in that 5-6 game weeks. He's got 4 of his 5 assists in that time. And the thing that, I don't think you need, I think clean sheets can actually be the bonus for him. And I'd almost expect the assists to come, particularly with set pieces. He's obviously got the record for a defender of assists now. Sort of goes under the radar because of Trent. But the other factor on Robertson is he got 3 bonus the other day from an assist. That is how good he is, and he doesn't, to get 8 points, he doesn't even need a clean sheet. So I think he is an option, particularly if people haven't maybe got Cancelo and thinking, well, actually, I could probably do with that spot, because there are quite a few people without that. So I think, I think he's probably slightly ahead of Trent just because of how far forward he was playing. That said, some of Trent's passing was ridiculous, absolutely, particularly for that Salah goal. So I do like Robertson, but the one that, just going back, where I think he can go in terms of taking the money down, probably one of the best value defenders in the game is Botman. It's ridiculous. He's playing for arguably the best defense, or one of the top 3 without question. And if you look at their fixtures, this is the next 6. So they've got Leeds at home. At home, so the home games in the next 6 are Leeds, Fulham, and West Ham. They could easily get 3 clean sheets from that. And then the way they've got Arsenal, Crystal Palace, and Bournemouth. Again, they could maybe get 2 from that. And would you be absolutely shocked? Because I think they got a clean sheet at Old Trafford. I wouldn't be shocked if they went to the Emirates and kept a clean sheet. Stranger things had happened. And I think the reason I quite like the Botman pick is, at the moment, everybody owns Trippier. I mean, what is their ownership actually? I don't know. Let's have a look. What's Trippier's ownership?
It's like 50-odd%, I think.
No, 66.4%. So Newcastle keep a clean sheet.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
It's like a Haaland goal, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
You can't even cheer your captain score anymore, can you?
Exactly.
And I think with Pope, there's cheaper goalkeepers that will get more bonus and more save points. I think he's a bit like Edison now. He's become a 6 or a 2 point merchant. So I would, I like Botman. I think 4.4 is ridiculous value. So I think that could be the way to go. And then almost have 5 defenders that are playing that are going to help you navigate the blanks by just rotating.
So use some of that. So use that extra 0.4 to upgrade, your Bruynes or your Pattersons.
Yeah. And I wouldn't go mad there. But imagine if you could go like Botman and Shaw. You could go Botman and Dunk, however it rotates for you. Yeah. But I think I almost want to get to that squad of 15 playing players, because it also gives you the flexibility as well that if the doubles unexpectedly come up, you could bench boost quite easily. You could save your wild card. It gives you a lot more flexibility, and I think we can do it because the best teams this season, or some of the best teams this season, are giving us the best value. So Arsenal, incredible value. You've got effectively 8/9 million midfielders coming in at 6 million. You've got defenders for Arsenal and Newcastle coming in less than 5 million, who are exceptional value. So I think that's
I like Bob.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I'm considering at the moment. But I will probably do it next week because I think Ben White this week.
That was what I was going to ask you. Are you tempted to do it this week? I make one of those decisions on those three sort of excellent choices. You know, two of whom, or in fact, arguably three of whom, have an excellent fixture this weekend. So you could say, well, White's got to go to Brighton, who are pretty good at home. You know, you could get an instant advantage by making that transfer this week and just saying, well, I'm happy with, you know, banking the cash and just using my free transfer, getting rid of James, saving 0.1 because he's bound to go down at 5.7 by the weekend, and so on and so forth. Or would you value the overall combination of the two transfers more?
The latter, because there's still so many unknowns. So I mean, the way I'm talking about Bruyne at the moment, he's completely finished for me. That's not necessarily the case, because it could be that he starts again and Wolves keep a clean sheet, and they make it really difficult for Man United, and it gives us, you think, well, actually, that he could be a genuine option to hold. I also think Arsenal defensively away are very good. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's 1 or 2-0 to Arsenal the weekend. I think that's the way the game's go. I don't think they'll score 3 or 4. So I think they'll win it by keeping it really tight. So actually, I do want to play Ben White this week. And I think if I didn't have confidence, if Ben White had a tougher game and I didn't think there was a chance of a clean sheet, I would make the transfer this week. But I don't know. I think it's a good fixture for Arsenal.
And even if there is a bench, we've got Andreas then first on the bench anyway, who's got a nice home
Southampton,
a nice home game anyway.
Well, I think
so it's not really needed, is it?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a question. Do you play Andreas as well this week? I think there's a genuine, you know, he's got as good a fixture as any.
Really good point from FPL name in the chat. Does Botman cut off a route to Wilson though, already having Almiron and Trips, which is obviously a really, really good point. So if you are thinking of getting Wilson, you just need to think about that. And Jake Lane says, finally subscribed. You guys are my best FPL weapon. Stroke kept secret. Jake, tell your friends. What's the matter with you? Tell your friends. And by the way, just a reminder, if you aren't subscribed, make sure you subscribe to this channel. And if you haven't liked it, we've only got 47 likes with over 460 people watching. Only 10% of people watching have pressed the like button. Please press the like button. It would be much, much appreciated. Some interesting stuff there on the defenders. Yeah, it came up on my recommended transfer on Fantasy Football Hub. It came up as Trent. I think I'd prefer Robertson looking at it. So I think my top two, probably Robertson, Botman, you know, for all the kind of reasons we mentioned. But I'm still going to hold off because, as we know, it's amazing how things, when we meet up next, guys, in 2 weeks, we'll probably be looking at someone else because something else will have changed, or someone will have got injured, or someone will be back. Or even it could be a case of Reece James has made a miracle recovery and he's actually back for, you know, back for game week 20 or something. So we never know. Just a quick look at game week 19 because we're not going to be podding.
Can I just cover off one of the questions asked on Wilson?
Yeah, of course.
Because I think it is a really good point on you know, because I think that's why people are avoiding going double Newcastle. But if I look at Wilson's points this season and you look at his minutes and you look at some of the players coming back, and I think Chris Wood can be trusted. I think Howe's shown he's used the squad, but I don't think he's played 90 minutes once this season, firstly. So I always think there's a minutes risk, and I think he's a bit like, he's not quite as bad, but as some of the other players we've mentioned, but he always feels like an injury waiting to happen.
He does.
And he misses a lot of games. He's only got bonus in one match this season. So the defence, because of how they play and they keep a lot of clean sheets, the defence tend to hog the bonus. I think I prefer double Newcastle defence than attack as well. And you've also got when Isak comes back, and if I don't think he's gonna. I think you're probably looking at a 60, 70 minute player. And I don't know. For me, I think there are better options potentially for less money as well.
Yeah.
I think Mitrovic is the obvious one. Tony.
I think that's the thing for me is the third option. There's a lot in there. Or, you know, or either you can go Haaland and Kane, for example, and and go down to a dead third player. But I think there's more than enough options. We're struggling for options in defence, I think, because looking at that list, there's not really many there that really leap out at you either, is there?
Yes. I take the point, and I was thinking, I think one of my drafts had Almiron and Wilson in it, and I just wasn't feeling completely comfortable with it. I mean, obviously, I benefited from the big haul from Wilson, and had him when he was a bit of a differential, so that was great. So if you've had a good experience with him, a bit like owning Phil Foden, you will think about going back to him. But he is starting to show signs of his, fallibility. He's been ill twice now in the last month, and missed several matches. He's one of these sort of slightly made of glass players. He gets a knock or he gets an injury or a hammy and he drops out for a long time. So I think for the 4.4 and for the immediate cash it would free up for me that I'm going to give some serious thought to doubling up on that defence, just because it keeps statistically getting better and better. The improvement of Newcastle has been, they're just showing a maturity with the way they're playing that I like.
Yeah, in 3 of the last 4 games, they've only allowed an XG of less than 0.4 as well.
Wow.
So I just think the value there at 4.5, is there a better defender than Botman for considering who he's playing for? Nailed as well. He might miss the odd game. I think Howe's shown he will rotate, but the higher up they are and the closer they are to the top of the league, I think the less he's going to rotate that defence.
And I think if we were unsure about both Newcastle and Arsenal, I think if we were unsure about their credentials in the first half of the season, or maybe after World Cup things revert back, just look at their performances on the weekend again. They are exactly the same. They're relentless and they look in incredible value, and they're the real deal, the pair of them. I think if there are any questions left about either team, I think it's fair to say at the moment, following on from their weekend performances again, they are both the real deal, and we should really be taking both teams very, very seriously, I think.
Agreed.
So looking ahead to game week 19, because we aren't going to be podding before 19, because I think the deadline is Monday, incredibly short turnaround. But obviously there is a double, and we haven't really talked.
It's also 4 p.m. Monday as well.
4 p.m.
really,
deadline.
Really weird time, because I think it's a 5:45 kickoff or something. The first
something
match
like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously Chelsea and Fulham both double. They've both got some reasonable options. None of them are massively highly owned options, maybe outside of Andres Pereira and potentially Mitrovic, but there are a few options. Rich, what are your thoughts on? Are you thinking of bringing anyone kind of left field in just to try and attack this double?
Yeah, I think I obviously want to see how they go against Forest this next game. I think Kai Havertz is showing some form. I think he is pictured. Is that Havertz on the right hand side of your graphic? Scored, I think, a hat trick in one of the little pre-season games before the restart. Scored at the weekend, and I think for now, I think the place is his to lose. He may not start every game, because obviously we've got Aubameyang as well, and he might get a run out, but. It seems to me like Havertz is if he keeps scoring in every game, he's going to get the starts. So at 7.7, that's very reachable from Martial. That's very reachable from any of the sort of mid-priced forwards. And also, if Darwin has another shocker, then maybe he's a downgrade there. So with 2 transfers, you could bring in Havertz and Mitrovic next week, so that might be a nice double switch that I could look at. Certainly not afraid to do it, and I'm more attracted to do that, I think, than Mason Mount, who's going to be another very, very popular pick. He's not on the graphic, but 7.5 million, 10 points already. Bit of probably Chelsea's most consistent for minutes. I would say, and starts, even though he's not guaranteed a spot. I think he is probably the consistent pick. So a couple of options, certainly Mount and Havertz on my mind. I'm more attracted to the forwards than the defenders, because I just think City will score, and therefore you're getting very little upside to the double game week from a defensive perspective. And actually, I don't really want to double up on Chelsea with Kepa, for the long term.
Yeah.
So,
and
those are
Fulham,
my thoughts there.
and Fulham
yeah,
tend to
Mitrovic
score
really,
again, don't they? So if you
exactly, I've got Andreas. I'll play Andreas in the double. Yeah. I'm glad I've got him for that. And I still feel Mitrovic is probably worth the risk, but I'd rather do it. I'd rather not make it my only attacking option for the double, hence the Havertz thing. I think it's a captain that's the difficult call for that double game week. Because do you go with a Salah? Do you go with a Haaland, single game week, or do you pick Mitrovic on 4 yellow cards? Big flag there to say be careful, or do you just go for an out and out Chelsea attacker for the 2 games? It's a tough call. Really,
we've got a very specific slide for that, Rich, in a few minutes' time, and it's very interesting reading actually. So we'll touch on that. Adam, any thoughts on the assets for, I don't know, maybe Sterling or a Chelsea defender or Havertz or anyone else? Is anyone of interest to you for the double?
Only the 2 that Rich has already mentioned. I don't think I wanted another Chelsea defender. I've got.
You wouldn't know who to pick anyway, would you?
Well, that's it. I thought Havertz. I think Havertz looked okay, and I think Mount's an option. But I'll probably go for either or, not both. Yeah, exactly. And there's no guarantee that both of them play both matches either. So.
Yeah, same. I think Mitrovic, Havertz, we've all got Andreas, obviously. Sterling is one, but I just haven't seen enough from him for his pretty such an awkward price point. You'd probably have to be downgrade or upgrade from somewhere else, whereas Havertz kind of fits in there nicely, doesn't he? So I think they're the ones for me as well.
I think if you've got 4 players from the 2 teams for game week 19, I think that is more than enough. Agree. I don't think you need to be trying to get 5 or 6 in, taking hits. Although obviously you can start gambling on the hits paying off, but I don't think it's worth going for 5 or 6. I just think that the 2 teams they're not the best teams, are they? We keep on mentioning the Arsenals, the Cities, the Newcastles, the teams that just win every week. That's what you want the bulk of your squad to be made up with those guys, not teams that lose half their matches.
No.
Agree. And just have a quick look at the predicted points for game week 18 and 19 combined. Kane is actually above Haaland, interestingly, only by 0.1, but he is. Salah, Darwin is there, Mitrovic, then Sterling, Havertz is on 12, Mount is then on 12. Cordova-Reid, who everyone was laughing at last week, he was in the Hubs argument 11. He went and scored. He looks really, really good. Thiago Silva is in there as well. Leno, Willian, and Andreas. It's just hard to look at Cordova-Reid or Willian, who may be decent options if Andreas Pereira wasn't 4.6 million, right, on free kicks and corners and whatever else, and Mitrovic still remains amazing value at 6.9. But some interesting stuff there. Let's look at the captain for this week, game week 18. Again, probably a pretty easy one, sadly. Predicted points: Haaland 9.9 points this weekend, home to Everton. Kane 8, Salah 7.9, De Bruyne 7.8, Darwin, Son, Almiron, Cancelo, all with 6 or 7 points there. Odds checker, Haaland 2 to 5 to score any time. You just can't see him not scoring, right? He's I don't think we've ever seen anything like it in the history of the Premier League, where if he doesn't score, it will be a miracle. Kane and Salah are both even money to score any time. Nunez 11 to 10, and in terms of the poll as well, Haaland flying away with that. The more interesting one, as we touched on a bit earlier, as you touched on, Rich, is the captain for double game week 19 with Haaland, because he's only playing the one game. I think it's away to Chelsea, is nowhere to be seen on the Hub predictor. So top is Mitrovic with 8.5 points. Sterling second, 8.5. Kane third, 7.7. Havertz 7.6. Salah 7.5. Mount 7.5. And then some more Fulham and Chelsea players, but obviously it's taking into account the double. And Haaland away to Chelsea is why Haaland isn't there. So this could be the first game week where we don't captain Haaland for, what seems like since game week 2 onwards, I think, more or less. Yeah. So, Rich, any thoughts at the moment on who your captain will be for double game week 19?
Yeah, I think it's got to be a double game week, hasn't it? I mean, look, we're not talking Emmanuel Dennis here, are we? We're not, or
Wout Weghorst. I knew you were going to see him.
No, exactly. I mean, we went after some real, real duds.
Some real toe rags last year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think across 180 minutes, across 2 games, a home game for each side, I think it's got to be Mitrovic or one of the Chelsea attackers over Haaland.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I will captain a double game week player. Yeah, and it will. And I'm tempted to get the 2 strikers in at the moment, just in terms of saving 2 transfers. That means leaving Reece James on the bench to plummet in price. But I just think I think I can probably do it with just getting maybe lose Darwin and go for it a bit with those 2 doublers.
I think after this weekend you'll be having second thoughts on that. I can see a Darwin brace or something.
Yeah, exactly. Probably. Probably. But it's real toughy, and it will. What's nice about it is at the moment it's. In some ways, I quite like. Obviously, fantasy football it's less. There's less variance. If the captain is always going to be the same for everybody throughout the game, it's effectively been removed from the game. For game week 19, it is a bit more of a free roll, and so you'll see a big spread of choices, and that will make for a lot of movement around the rankings. So it'll be an exciting week, and it's also spread over something like 12 days as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
from end to end. It's half of January, so yeah. I think there's a game every day from tomorrow till next Thursday. And then there's a break for the cup, and then that final Chelsea Fulham game, isn't it?
It is the following Thursday, and there's FA Cup games in between, which is interesting because it could be that there's some kind of injury there. Mitrovic will play in the FA Cup for Fulham, get injured, and then we're all screwed, aren't we? But
well, does if he gets booked for the cup game, does he then get suspended?
It
for
doesn't.
The league
but
game?
If anybody gets sent off, they're then suspended for the league game.
Okay, so they could still FA Cup could still play.
Could get injured, could get suspended. Yeah. I've got a different take on it. So I think Mitrovic, if he doesn't get it makes no difference, does it? If he either gets booked this week and he's missing a game, or he doesn't get booked and he carries that risk. So I think you're carrying a big risk with Mitrovic. I think Pereira's not an option to captain. So over the other players, I think looking at the Chelsea boys, the City ones are. Again, I'm not confident on either, and it's also, let's say Havertz, would I ditch Martial at home to Bournemouth or Darwin, who I don't really want to lose? So it's fitting them in, or then Mount. I'm going to have to probably sell a Martinelli, which I could do. There's going to be very few times this season where Haaland is, I don't know what to say, differential cap. Well, yeah, it will be a differential captain. He is that good. He could get a hat trick at Chelsea, and I wouldn't be. I think it would be great to watch Haaland for one game, thinking I'm really benefiting from these points. I don't think the other thing that sort of puts doubt in my mind is the fact that how split the fixtures are, because it could mean Chelsea do go full strength in the 2 games because there's a game in between, but it also means a lot can happen injury wise, and there's just we're not going to have that press. We're not going to have the press conference in between, or there's not a short period of time. It's like a week. Is it 10 days? Isn't it? I mean, what is it? So it's let's have a look. Yeah, it's almost. I think it's exactly. There's a week, but there's a game in the middle. So yeah, I think having Haaland as a differential is quite exciting. I mean, the other one I'm considering, if I didn't go Haaland, would be Rashford at home to Bournemouth. I think he is on a different level at the moment.
Yeah, he's playing well.
I think he would he looks absolutely. I mean, I vice captained him this week over De Bruyne and Darwin, and had no issues with it. So, yeah, I think it'd be great to have Haaland where his ownership is lower.
Interesting, isn't it? Wide up. The other one is just got to come to mind is Kepa. So we all own Kepa. Captaining a goalkeeper in a double game week's never.
Yeah,
never
you don't want
bad
to.
show. He might get 3 or 4 save points against City, mightn't he? In terms
Yeah,
of
but
like
you don't. I don't know
accrued
if I
save
could.
point.
I don't know if I could captain Kepa, because when Haaland's going through on goal for the 4th time in the afternoon and he's already put 3 in the net.
Maybe, but
you know,
just a thought.
I think if it wasn't against City, if it was against any other team, I think it'd been a really, really good shout, because he's good on bonus, he's good on saves. But you know, we've seen already Haaland, he'll just score against anybody. He doesn't discriminate, does he? So
no, fair.
It's fantastic. Who are you thinking, Fergie? Out of that massive list,
I hadn't even thought about it until I looked at the predicted points, and I was like, flipping heck, it's a bit. I'm actually looking. I'm just looking now, and Chelsea are away to Forest this week, which I hadn't really looked at. I'm even considering maybe bringing in someone like Havertz in early for that Forest game, but I don't know. At the moment, it would be, Haaland is obvious, but I think I would go for a doubler. And I just think if Mitrovic doesn't get booked, I think Mitrovic is the kind of player who he can score against anyone. I just think he has. He's proven he's that good. He can score against anyone. So it'd probably be Mitrovic, but I would probably look to get a Chelsea forward in as well. I know Martial have Bournemouth. I just think with Martial, he's only got 60 odd minutes in him, haven't he? And obviously, it was fine this weekend, but this is where another full game week's information is just so important.
Agreed.
It's so important,
Absolutely.
and it's very hard to say what I will do.
Who's Fulham's first game against?
Leicester away.
Okay, yeah, they're not looking too good on the restart, are they? So
I think you're right, Fergie. Another week's information.
It'll be obvious, or more obvious, I think. Then
could be more obvious, because he could be building up Martial's minutes as well. So he could play 75 this week, and he could score and look sharp. Let's face it, if both Darwin and Martial score and look sharp this weekend, we're probably not going to sell them, I don't think.
Or if Martial has, if he comes off limping at 60 minutes, the move to Havertz becomes obvious, or Mitrovic becomes really obvious. So this is what I mean about, it's very hard to say what I will be doing, because it all depends how the games play out. We could have some complete random thing, right? Haaland gets injured, for example, and then that opens up all different opportunities and things. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, it's staying on your toes, isn't it? Really, and and reacting.
One final question to you both. What's your thoughts on taking hits next week on top of, say, carrying 2 transfers? So maybe doing 3 or 4 transfers. Do you think this is like, so often when we get double game week fever, as you call it, Fergie, when we get into the mid-20s, people start really going for it, don't they, and taking hits. Do you think we should keep our powder dry, or start spending those -4s? What do you think?
I'm gonna have fun with it, and I'll just see how it pans out. But at the moment, I don't have Mitrovic, and I don't have Havertz, and they are 2 players I think I will, at the moment, definitely want. Obviously, things can change over the weekend, but that's the 2. They're 2 forwards as well. So that means I'm definitely getting rid of Darwin and Martial if I go that route, and that's without looking at the rest of them. That's keeping James. That's keeping anyone who may be affected over the weekend. I'm not scared. Like, especially after last season's doubles rich, and I think all 3 of us in our post-season review said we wish we'd attacked the doubles a little bit more.
Yes.
I'm definitely not scared to as much as I was, and now definitely I think these days for me, maybe not so much for you, but I'm definitely playing FPL now as a bit of fun rather than as seriously as I used to. So if it doesn't pay off, I'm not going to be as heartbroken as I would have been a couple of seasons ago either. But
yeah, it's low risk. I mean, relative. If you buy certainly all those transfers, say you make 3 or 4 transfers, they're all for players who have the extra game. You're only really spending a couple of points on those transfers. I do believe that's true. You just got to make sure you're okay with the legacy that comes out the other side.
And Chelsea are home to Palace in 20, which is not the worst either.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
Newcastle away to Fulham. I think Fulham's fixtures toughen,
and then they get better again.
Chelsea's aren't too bad.
Yeah, I think
Chelsea aren't too bad. I think they have got Liverpool at some point, but then they play Fulham again, West Ham, and they've got another. Southampton. So,
but home to Palace, home to Fulham in 2 out of 3 is a pretty good fallout for double, isn't it? For if you are going, heavy on Chelsea players, and I think in Havertz and Mount, for example, if you went for those two, if Chelsea do go and score a few goals, I think they're very likely. They're likely to be involved in the goals. You mentioned Arsenal earlier, Adam. Whereas Arsenal's goals can come from it can come from Xhaka, come from Gabriel. It can come from anywhere. With Chelsea, I think it's a little bit different at the moment. They tend to be those whoever's playing in the front three tends to get the goals.
I think the other point to consider, Rich, is I think I'd consider a -4, maybe not much more than that, but it's you buy in. I suppose if you're buying more tickets, you're giving yourself more options of getting lucky, aren't you? So, but I think the thing you got to be careful of is taking out good single game week players. So Martial at home to Bournemouth, I could be a really good example of this. Now, I take his point. He's made a glass. He might be injured by then, but equally we know him at his best. His link up with Bruno and Rashford, that could be 2 goals and an assist, and Havertz could get 3 points in the 2 games. So I think it's just trying to balance it up. Is that sometimes those good singlers can be absolutely fine as well.
Are you thinking of any hits, Rich? Have you got like -8 and -12s lined up? Or?
-4 tops. I probably I haven't had a hit yet this season. I'm not feeling not feeling like it's coming in 19. Probably across the doubles. At some stage, I'll want to get I think where you're getting a premium in, so something like for Kane in game week 20 to go alongside Haaland. Probably more tempted to get a premium in who's got that higher ceiling. I think for some of these mid-price players or for defenders, the hits aren't worth it, perhaps. But we'll see. I mean, I'm not averse to a -4 if it means moving the money around to where I ultimately want it to be. I think certainly James to Botman seems good for a long-term move. So pretty.
If that money helps you
exactly,
bring an amount to Havertz or whoever, I think you're right. I think that's fine. I think taking hits in double game weeks is absolutely fine.
Just good. Quickly on to Fergie is a punt for game week 18. So this week, actually last week first, I went for Che Adams, who underwhelmed. Southampton, underwhelmed. I think it's probably fair to say. But this week, we've mentioned him already, or I've mentioned him already anyway. He's always high on the Hub's points projections. He returned last week against all the odds, 5.5 million midfielder, home to Southampton this week. I think he's a pretty good pick. Like I say, he just can't seem to get in our teams at the moment because of Andreas. But it is Bobby de Cordova-Reid. I've got his heat map up on screen for those looking. And if you look at his heat map over the whole season, he was very much playing as like a right wing back. But this is over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and he's playing very, very advanced. I really like him, and I think he's gonna return. Like I say, he's high on all the predictions for the Hub. Scored last week. I think he's gonna return again this week. So that is my punt for this week, Bobby de Cordova-Reid. So there. On to our teams. A bit of a boring one this week, I think, because it sounds like we're all saving, but obviously with game week 19 in mind. Adam, we've got your team up first. Saving for 18. Any early thoughts for game week 19?
Yeah, I think the way I'm going to go at the moment is save this week, and then I would. It depends on how Darwin and Martial look. A lot of it does, and Martinelli, because I'd be quite happy taking a -4 for game week. For game week 19?
Yeah.
So bringing in Mount looked okay. Havertz, Mitrovic. We might also, I mean, it's possible we'll have even some more info on the doubles as well.
Yeah.
We may not, even if we get, which might help with which defender I bring in as well for James. So I think anything I say at the moment is pretty speculative. I'm better off just waiting for more news. I think the only consideration I've got at the moment is, do I start Andreas? Because I think he's got a very, very good fixture. I think in reflection, I think I'm going to give Martial, because it's between him and Martial. Or you could argue maybe Martinelli as well, but I think I'm going to stick with
you have to, don't you?
Martial and Martinelli. I just think, and I looked at it as well after I'd thought about it. Andreas this season, in 8 appearances at home, has got 3 attacking, he's got 3 assists, and his stats aren't particularly great.
So cracked the bar about 4 or 5 times, doesn't he? Come terribly close with.
He has, yeah. I think he's a fine first sub in case of rotation. So, I'll stick loyal to Martial and Martinelli. So yeah, save a try. It's boring this week.
It is boring this week. Just quickly, if we just go back to the transfer algorithm where it projects double game weeks based on Ben Crellin's statements as well. Chelsea do have a fairly decent chance of another double in 21 as well, which is worth bearing in mind. I'm assuming it's off either the fallout of the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup third round, but they are projected 1.55, which is kind of over 50% chance of having a further double in 21. So it is worth bearing that in mind. If you're not going on Chelsea, you could be going hard in on Chelsea. If you go for Havertz, Mount and Kepa,
double,
you could have a double in 3 game weeks, which would, it's I don't think there's much risk there because they have the double anyway. They've got a decent fixture in 20 anyway. And, if that lands, that double, then you're golden. Whereas other people will then be scrabbling to get them in again, won't they? So it's just something else to think about.
Good point. It's a good point. Yeah,
but it could also be a trap
as well. Is that double going to be? Aren't they going to end up playing Liverpool or something in that double? I'm not absolutely sure, but I think it.
It could be.
Great double,
but
so
but you say that I still don't mind the attackers against Liverpool because is it Liverpool have gone behind in their last, I don't know, it's a ridiculous amount of matches, and I know Spurs have as well, but they're both Spurs and Liverpool are just conceding for fun. So defensively, I agree.
Liverpool, I agree with you. Liverpool defensively are giving up chances. So yeah, I sort of agree on that. But at the same time, I think that's where you've got to be careful because you can easily fall into a trap. Oh, Chelsea have got these double game weeks. We know he likes to rotate, firstly. And secondly, it could mean we're missing some brilliant players who've got great single fixtures who will play pretty much 90 minutes. So I think
it'll just mean you're wild carding in game week 24 or something.
Exactly.
It will be. Yeah.
This is why I think this game week, for me, for Chelsea in particular, is a really interesting watch because it's a Forest have been better. They're much better at home than they are away. The crowd will be behind them. We know Chelsea have got some dodgy results in them. What's their resilience like? What's their performance like? Will they create chances? Will they be solid defensively? There's a lot of questions there. Will he stick with a settled lineup? There's just so many unknowns with Chelsea. So yeah, it'll be interesting for me on watching them. If Havertz plays well again and Mount plays well and they look defensively solid, then I think we'll be in a better place to make decisions for game week 19 and moving forwards.
Lovely job. Rich, we've now got your team on screen. Very similar. Save 18, and I think we're all reasonably similar for 19.
I think so. I mean, I've got this tiny bird on my shoulders saying, why don't you just use your 0.2 million you got in the bank and do De Bruyne to Salah as a cheeky move for the for the Leicester game. I thought I'd mention it as a very unlikely possibility, just because that's going to be a difficult watch tomorrow night in the first game again. I think Liverpool now seem to have assumed the position as the team that plays first in the game week, for sort of 2 or 3 games in a row. So anyway, it seems like that. So I think on Monday they're the first game as well. So yeah, it's a difficult watch not having Salah. I normally have him, and I've got just the money to do it. But it is wasting one of those precious transfers we've just spent 1 hour and 20 minutes talking about using very carefully on Monday. So, I am likely to give De Bruyne the Everton game, roll as we are, and then on Monday lose Reece James for funds and buy Mitrovic and another Chelsea attacker. Could be Mount, could be Havertz, so probably for a -4.
Good stuff.
But I'm quite stingy, as you know, so I might not get -4.
Yeah, I'm very much the same at the moment. Everything seems reasonably straightforward at the moment, doesn't it? There's not many massive decisions to be made. Everyone's talking about this week, how to replace James. The template is so incredibly strong. Unless you've got, people are obviously split between Salah and De Bruyne maybe, or Foden, and some have got Martial or not, but that core 7 or 8 players is very, very similar across the board. So yeah, it's just a case of how did I this week use the transfers, attack the doubles, and then see how the rest of them land in 20 and 21. So yeah, I haven't really got too much more to add from that. Just a reminder, my team feature with recommended transfers is now live. So my recommended transfer this week was to save. It was to save, but it gives you an alternative as well. My alternative was to take out Reece James for Trent Alexander-Arnold. So even though if you don't think it's the transfer for you, it still gives you an idea of very, very objectively. Take away all your mates in your ears, all your WhatsApp groups, all the stuff on Twitter and whatever else. It gives you a very objective, data-driven, optimal recommendation to really have a look at, and that helped me look not so much at Trent, but it helped me look at Robertson, and that's something which I'm thinking about now only because of that. But it's very, very good. Go to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, go to my team, import your team ID, and it will look at your team, analyze it, and give you personalized recommendations or your team using artificial intelligence. You can do all this for free for the next 12 days, which is still 2 game weeks. You can do it for Gameweeks 18 and 19. It's a great time to try it out, absolutely free. Just click in the top link in the description below. Competition time for our YouTube watchers. Last week, the top point scorer, unbelievably, was Mitrovic. And not one person, because we spent the whole podcast talking about how Silver had said that Mitrovic is very doubtful, wherever. Not one person went for Mitrovic. Loads of people went for Rashford. They were incredibly lucky, but there were no winners last week. So for this week's competition, chance to win one of our fantastic Fantasy Football Hub mugs, which is right over Rich's shoulder, you need to like this video. So please press the like button. Make sure you are subscribed if you're not already, and then comment who will be the top point scorer in Game Week 18. Adam, I'll come to you first. Can't go for Haaland, Kane or Salah. Who is going to be the top point scorer in Game Week 18 for you?
I'm tempted to say Darwin, but I won't. So I think he's too easy. He's an easy target to go for. So I'll make a bit fun. I am going to go with Gabriel away at Brighton. Cool. I love a 15-pointer. I think it could be 1-0 header off a corner from Gabriel.
I remember Lewis Dunk had a 15-pointer against Arsenal a couple of seasons ago. I think Brighton over the last few years tend to be that Arsenal's kind of bogey team, but we will see. Rich, Adam's gone for Gabriel. Who do you think?
Okay. Well, I won't say KDB because he's a premium. So I would say that I think Phil Foden's very likely to start this one, having missed the other one. So I'm going to go Foden.
Having missed 4 of the last 5. 50-50 start, Rich, do you think? Or?
I think he'll start. Yeah, I do. I think Foden. You'll see Foden and Bernardo coming in for this one. So I'll go with Foden. So hold on to him if you own him, folks. I wish I had him for the weekend.
I'm stuck. I do think Ben Rama of West Ham is quite a decent pick moving forward. I think they got some really good fixtures, West Ham: Brentford, Leeds, Wolves and Everton. I do like Benrahma. On penalties as well, I think now as well, Annie. But I'm going to go for a Chelsea player away to Forest, and I'm going to back the man, Kai Havertz. I think Havertz is going to show us all. I think he'll score. I think he'll get a goal and assist, and we'll all be buying him ahead of double game week.
He'll be the Monday's bandwagon, won't he? Definitely.
John Shanley says, don't laugh, Kenny Tete. Jefferson's gone for Kulusevski. We've had shouts for Koulibaly, Cancelo, Willian, Haaland, Son, Mitrovic, Mount, Trippier, Bruno Gomes, Chef AB says. Alberis has gone for Darwin. Nurjahan says, Armron will be top. And Chef says, Bruno Gomes, I want my mug. Got some shouts for Zaha as well. Don't forget, make sure you are subscribed and tell us who you want, and you will win. If you are right, and you are the only one, you will win a mug. If you are right and there are multiple winners, we will do a random draw. And that is it for us for this week. Thank you so much for everyone who has joined in the chat. For those who will watch it back and those listening back on the podcast, your support, as usual, is very, very much appreciated. We had a fantastic crowd in this afternoon. Seen this, what is it, Thursday afternoon in the UK? We had about 600 people watching currently at any one time, which is really, really good for this time of day. So thank you so much, everyone who's come on and watched us. Thank you, Rich, as usual. Where can people find you?
At Rich Clarke FPL on Twitter.
Don't forget, Rich's exclusive team reveal is on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. It is free for the next 2 weeks, free trial. So if you want to read Rich's team, his decisions, and what he's going to be doing exclusively on the hub, as well as everyone else, as well as all the best FPL players in the world, FPL Salah, Big Man Bakar, FPL Heisenberg, Holly Shand, all these players, much, much more, go to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. Adam, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Hopta Stats.
Lovely stuff. And thank you so much, as usual, Adam, for all your fantastic insight. And my Twitter handle is at FFH_Fergi. This podcast and video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast. Give us 5 stars and leave a comment. It would be much, much appreciated. John says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, John. And we'll be back at 5:30. So we won't be back next week because it's the FA Cup weekend. We'll be back Thursday, the 12th of January, looking ahead to game week 20, which is a double for Man City and Spurs as long as neither team draw in the FA Cup, and we will know as well how Game Week 21 has fallen, so don't miss that one. That one is going to be absolutely fantastic. In the meantime, have a brilliant New Year. Enjoy all the football, and may all your arrows be green. Goodbye for now.